Good morning. I don't know if I'm recording for anyone. Everyone's here. Okay. Okay, so we're on 84A1. We're discussing Machlokas Rav and Shmuel about a situation where one party, remember they have two courtyards, and we're trying to figure out who gets the common space. There's some common space between them, and the question is who gets that common space. And we had a number of different scenarios, but we had a Machlokas Rav and Shmuel about the following scenario where for one party, they have to go down to reach what it is that if they want to use that common area, and the other party would have to go up. Okay? So Rav said, they're both forbidden. They're both forbidden because at the end of the day, it's for both of them, they have to reach. One of them is reaching down, one of them is reaching up. For both of them, it's difficult to reach, and therefore they're both forbidden. Shmuel says it's easier to go down in general than it is to go up. I didn't have a chance to look into your question, but it's easier in general to go down than it is to go up, right? And therefore, the party that goes down, that's the one that is allowed to use the common space. The party that's going up cannot use that space. That was Machlokas Rav and Shmuel, and we had a one back and forth around our Mishnah as attempted proof for Shmuel. The Gemara rejected this, and part of the way we defended Rav was suggesting that the words lechatzer, to the courtyard, didn't mean just the courtyard, but rather meant af lechatzer, also the courtyard. Okay, I'm not going to review what exactly that was, but the point is that in the Mishnah there was a term that was lechatzer, to the courtyard, and the Gemara then ultimately concluded that the words lechatzer, to the courtyard, meaning accessible to the courtyard, meant also to the courtyard, meaning not only for the courtyard but also for the people up above. Okay, that's where we finished off, and the Gemara now is going to prove that the term courtyard also means also to the courtyard. So Hachidam Mistabra makes sense to say that to the courtyard means also to the people in the courtyard. Tani Sefer, we have a Mishnah. We're at 84A1, second column, middle of the paragraph, middle of the column. So Tani Sefer, it says the end of the Mishnah. Bamed Dvar Mamurim. When is this so? Bismucha. When is it so that something above 10 tefachim goes to the people on the mirpeset, on the gallery or on the porch? Bismucha. When it is close to the people on the porch. Aval b'mufleges. If you have this elevated thing which is separate from the porch, afilu gvoa asar tefachim lechatzer, even if it's higher than 10 tefachim, it goes to the people of the chatzar. So remember, we had a case where we have there's the people up above, there's the people down below, and there is something high. If it's high and next to the porch, then it goes to the people of the porch. If it's high and goes and far away from the porch, the Mishnah said it goes to the people of the chatzar. But ask the Gemara, if you want to say, sorry, my lechatzer, what does it mean when it says thank you? What does it mean when it says to the chatzer? Ilam lechatzer b'shari. If you want to say the Mishnah means that when it says it goes to the people of the courtyard, it means only to the people of the courtyard and they're allowed to use it. Amai, why is it so? Rishusa d'Tavayahu. It's a place which really should belong to both of them. Why should it belong to both of them? Because it's no different that if you have a wall in between a courtyard, two courtyards, who does the wall belong to? Both of them, right? So over here you have a high wall, you have a high rock in the middle of a space, in the middle of a courtyard, right? And so when the Mishnah said it goes to the people of the courtyard, it can't mean just to the people of the courtyard because it's a wall. It's a wall which is a shared space by both of them. So what does the word lechatzer mean? It must mean that it's equal. There's equal usage for both of them. Lechatzer doesn't mean it's only the people of the courtyard and therefore it's permitted. Rather it means lechatzer af lechatzer means that the people of the courtyard are also able to access it, even though it's above 10 tefachim. But it's saying that both of them are able to access it, ushnei masurim, and both of them are forbidden. So achinami.
Does it make a difference if somebody built it?
No. So we're not. Yes, we've been avoiding deliberately like the question of like, well, who does it belong to? It's not so much the point. The point is who has the access to it, right?
How would they have access? The whole point was that if it's more than 4 tefachim away, it's not considered part of the
mirpeset.
Yeah.
Right. But the point is,
they actually have access to it if they can't physically get there.
Well, but the point is they both can't access it. Meaning it's a space. Forget who built it. We're just going to ignore that. So let's keep that out of the conversation. Forget who built it. But you have some space. Let's say again, we're not. We're thinking of like the tiny little New York City little lot where they have these huge spaces, right? And there's like no man's ish land in between. Okay, and so you have people up above on their elevated space, and then you have more than 4 tefachim away, which means this, whatever, more than, this is already further. It's like 2 feet away, right? 2 feet away from the elevated space, you have this very high thing. So the initial way, when we read the Mishnah, we said, it goes to the people of the courtyard. But now we're pointing out, that makes no sense. It can't go to the people of the courtyard because they have to be reaching up. That's like a wall in their space. So, but the people above, it's more than 4 tefachim away. That's the point. The point is for both of them, it's difficult to get to. And the word lechatzer, to the courtyard, doesn't mean it goes to the people of the courtyard and they could use it and it's permitted. It means that the people of the courtyard have a hard time reaching it. The people of the mirpeset have a hard time using it, and therefore it's both. It's usher for both of them. Af lechatzer, and as Gemara says, 84:82, hachinami my lechatzer, af lechatzer shnei masurim. It means also to the people of the courtyard, and they are both forbidden. Shma mina. We see that to the chatzer means also to the chatzer, and therefore Rav's position has so far been defended. Okay, now we try to bring another proof to this question. This machlokas, Rav and Shmuel from another part of the Mishnah. Tznan. The Mishnah said, chulias habor vasela, the embankment of a pit or a rock. If it's 10 tvachim high, it belongs to people of the gallery. Pachos mikan lechatzer. But if it's less than 10 tvachim high, it goes to the people of the courtyard. Okay. So the Gemara at this point, this is almost like a little bit out of order. If you remember, we actually quoted this Gemara. We quoted this Gemara in. Are we getting the drawing place? How did you know? You read my mind. That was very impressive. I am very impressed. Okay, Jesse, you've officially been here long enough. That was okay. So the point is that the Mishnah said, if you recall, we kind of had a bit of this. We had this quoted yesterday. Amar Avuna la'osan adar merpeses. In other words, the Mishnah begins by assuming that we're talking about a scenario where there is the porch and there's the people living above the porch. If you're in the art scroll and you want to look back to the picture on the last page, 84A1, right? Diagram A on 84A1. Yeah, the two levels, and therefore the Gemara was asking a question on Rav because we said that if it's above 10 tefachim, then the mirpeset area or that box, whatever, it goes to the people up above. And the Gemara said, why? It must be, that sounds like Shmuel, because one party is going down, the people on top are going down, the people on the bottom are going up, and we say it goes to the people on the top. You see that this is like Shmuel, going down is easier than going up. The Gemara answers, no, like diagram B, that there is no going down on the top people, it's actually flat. Right, it's the same level, diagram B, and again, when this is this is placed a little bit out of order. The Gemara we already kind of discussed this earlier. Mavuna la'osan adar merpeses, the people who are living on the gallery. Okay, good. Got the back and forth, fine. Says the Gemara. Now goes into that line in the Mishnah. Tenach sela bar ma'ikal meimar. So we understand everything when it talks about the rock. Okay, but what about when we're talking about a pit? Okay, meaning like this. The Gemara assumes. Thank you so much. The Gemara assumes that when it comes to a pit. We didn't really explain this. We read the Mishnah deliberately. And what it meant was like this. You have the people, okay, you have mirpeset people. Okay, there's people living over here. Okay, that's the people over here. And you have the chatzer people, right? Chatzer people, and you have the mirpeset people. Okay, and they're above. And then we say, yeah, whatever. Fine. And then you have a pit. So now, we didn't really explain what the pit is, but let's talk about the pit. So presumably the pit is a scenario where you have like a pit over here, right? This is a pit. And so you have the embankment, this is the walls of the pit, and then there is the space in the pit. So the people in the courtyard, they have to go up and then go down. These people are just going down. Okay? They're just going down into the pit, right? That's the case of the pit. And what did the Mishnah say? That's what the Gemara assumes. And the Mishnah assumes that the Mishnah says that if it's above 10 tefachim, it goes to these people. Now wait, it's not flat with them anymore. Now they're going down. So what does it sound like? Like Rav or like Shmuel? Like Shmuel. Like the one who says that when you go down, going down is easier than going up, right? So the Mishnah said, if it's above 10 tefachim, right, who gets to use this pit area? So the Mishnah said that if it's above 10 tefachim, then these people get to use it. Why? Because it's going down, and these people, it's going up and then down. But the point is, Rav would say that they're both usher, because these guys are going down for usage, these guys are going up for usage, and they're for both the usher. Shmuel says, no, when one party goes up and one party goes down, it goes to the down party, and that's exactly what the Mishnah seems to say. So Gemara has the answer. What does the Gemara say? That's Hamar of Yitzchak, Bered of Yudach, Bebar Memilei Amayin Askidan. We're talking about where it's filled with water. It's filled with water, and therefore, these guys are not going down. They are staying level. That's the word I'm looking for. Level. Okay. The Gemara says, very nice. It's filled right now. But at the end of the day, people get thirsty over Shabbos. They're going to keep on drinking the water, and eventually the water level is going to be lower than 10 tvachim. And then what? The Gemara says, no, since when the pit is allowed when it's full, it's also permitted when it later gets depleted. Ask the Gemara, Adraba, the opposite should be true. Since we know it's going to be depleted, it should be usher now, because it's going to get depleted at some point, right? So the Gemara says, no. Switch it, no water, or rather we're dealing with the case where it is, okay, those are my fruit, and basically it is filled with fruit, and therefore we're not worried, as opposed to water which is going to be depleted, we're not worried with fruit. Now what's the obvious question? You're going to eat the fruits. Ask the Gemara. Okay, shkach, so you're not thirsty, but you're hungry. You're going to eat the fruits. 84A3. Tivla. We're talking about tevel. What's tevel? Tevel is our fruits which are forbidden. Fruit which are forbidden. These are fruit which are untithed. You have not yet taken off your tithes. Okay, so your maestros, trumas, and maestros, etc. So the Gemara, and now why? So let the person just take it off on Shabbos. What's the answer? You can't take off Trumas and Maestros on Shabbos. Asr, okay, it has to be done before Shabbos, okay? And therefore, it's going to be left alone. Daikanami, the Gemara says, actually, I'll bring you a proof. They were talking about a case where it's filled with fruit, which are fruits which are Asr. Okay, what is the status of fruit which are Tevel? We don't have to deal with this over here so much, but they're muksa. You can't move them. You can't tell because since they have muksa is anything which doesn't have a usage on Shabbos, can't be moved, can't be used at all. So Tevel is...
You can gain benefit from them.
Correct. You're allowed to put something on top of it. It's muksa. It's muksa. So you're allowed to put something on top of it, right? But you won't be able to go ahead and move any of them because they are muksa. And the Gemara says, Daikanami, I'll prove to you that it's muksa. Tani dumya desela. Because again, what was the Mishnah's case? It said a pit and a rock. Okay? So Shema Mina. Now it says by putting them together, that means they have similar characteristics. What do we know about a rock on Shabbos? A rock is muksa, right? People who throw rocks on Shabbos are being over many Yisurim, not just muksa. But the point is that, I mean, whatever, fine. But the point is that rocks are muksa, and the fact that it puts these two cases together tells me that we're talking about something which is muksa, and so we could assume that the pit is also filled with something that is muksa, i.e., fruit that were not tithed, fruit that cannot be used on Shabbos, and therefore now we read this Mishnah, it's filled with fruit which are forbidden, and therefore the reason the Mishnah says in Tabat and Tzfachim it goes to these people is because it is level, and these people have to go up.
So what's the practical application of that? So
in a scenario where a pit is filled with fruit, which are
you
tevel.
can't do anything with it. So
Sure you can. You can put things on top of it. I could say, oh.
So that's what they're allowed to
Yeah.
do.
I'm allowed to go ahead and I'll leave my, I don't know, whatever, my stuff on top of this, right? Because with muksa, I'm allowed to put things on top of things which are muksa, I can't, even if it moves the things which are muksa, right? That would be fine. I can't move things which are muksa directly, right? But I'm allowed to go ahead, like we talked about in the past, you go into your freezer and there's something which is muksa in the freezer, some raw meat, but I'm allowed to go in and take the ice pop from under it, even though it's going to move it indirectly. So similarly, I can put something on top of the muksa that's going to move it. I can't move it directly myself.
How much of a finish is this? You just said that it's a wider area up top.
Mm-hmm.
It's all solid.
Okay, so you're saying, well, at the end of the day, part of the chiddush is, first of all, that there is a gap between them, right? Okay. And we're still saying, it's still, because it's higher, it's going to be his space. Yes?
But if it's fruit, like, you don't want to put anything on top, because how about you spill some water and...
Right, you're right, okay.
The whole thing should just be off limits.
It could...
If it's water,
right.
Are you using the water for swimming? You can't do that on Shabbos.
Well, we're assuming that the water, we're assuming it was drinking water. We're going to assume the person's going to use it for drinking. But the fruit, you're right, it's going to be limited in use. There's only so many things you're going to put on top of your pile of fruit. But bottom line is, that's a practical question. Meaning, you're saying, I may not want to use it. But the bottom line is, halachically, you would be allowed to use it. And that's what the Mishnah is coming to tell you, that halachically, if the guy on the top wants to use it, he's not as conscientious as you are about, ruining his fruit. Okay, he'd be allowed to. You might say that's a dumb idea, but he's allowed to. Yeah, you'd only be allowed to go ahead. If he wants to store some things, you can put on top of the fruit. Let's say he has some fruit which are not tevel. Well, that'd be pretty silly of him to mix them up, but let's say he has some pineapple which are not tevel and he wants to put them on top of it. Okay, he'd be allowed to do so.
It's probably more instructive for the people in the chatzar that they just can't use it because it belongs to the other.
Okay,
That would be more,
that's fair.
on Shabbos, you usually want to know what you...
Yeah. Again, pits. I'll make it very practical. Pits are storage spaces back in the day, right? Anything underground is a storage space. They don't have fridges. They don't have freezers. Anything that's pits is a storage space. So let's say they have a whole bunch of apples, right? And they are all tevel, right? And a person has a bunch of again things which are not fruits halachically, pineapple, right? And
Pineapple isn't it really?
you got to come speak chaver. What's it called? Okay, so you want to go ahead and they don't have the same, fine, but you want to store them in there as well. So you put them in the fridge. You're putting them in the fridge. That's what it is. The pit is a fridge. So don't think about it as like, oh, I'm putting stuff. The pit is a fridge, and so sometimes the fridge you have things which are chametz or whatever, things which are not allowed to be used, and you have things which are kosher. Fine, that's it. Okay, let's go further.
The people who are chazer can't even get to the marpeset because
the pit's in the way. 100%.
It belongs to people who marpeset, so that makes the marpeset also like no matter what. It's not.
Well, again, keep in mind, 10 tvachim, that is above 10 tvachim. It's not really inaccessible. It's just a little bit hard for them to reach, but it's kind of not that high, right? So really, technically, we could assume practically on Sunday through Friday, they're probably both using their fridge. But now, halachically on Shabbos, right? Let's say again, they're both using their fridge on Shabbos during the week. The question is on Shabbos, who's allowed to use this fridge? The answer is the people are in Pesach because it's inaccessible. It's harder to reach for the people in the bottom. Okay, let's go a little further. So, why do I need to have both the pit and the rock case if they're both the same? I need them both. If I only taught a rock, I would say there's no place for a precautionary decree and to be allowed to, and there's no problem to use it. Okay, but regarding a pit, there is a problem. There's a problem because sometimes the pit is not going to be filled with this very specific case of fruit which cannot be used. Sometimes it's going to be filled with fruit which will be able to use, and then there's a concern, I'm going to use those fruit on Shabbos, I'm going to lower the level, and now in the middle of Shabbos it's going to be usher for the people on top as well, and therefore maybe I should never be able to use a pit, because a pit by definition is something which at least sometimes is able to diminish in its size. Tzricha, therefore I need both cases. Not only the rock case, where there, the rock's not going anywhere, and therefore there's no issue of change over Shabbos, whereas on the case of the pit, sometimes, yes, we're talking about tevel, which is muktzah, but sometimes a pit is going to have regular fruits, and regular fruit will be eaten over Shabbos. It's going to get lower than a 10 tefach level, and therefore, for that reason, maybe I should say I should never be able to use a pit. Kamash will no. If when Shabbos begins, it's if this Shabbos it happens to have fruit which cannot be used, which are muktzah, the guy at the top, the people on the top, Merpesa people, are allowed to use the pits. Let's finish the Gemara. Tashma. Well, not really, but at least for this. Amud Tashma. We're going to try to bring a resolution. Anshe Chatzar, Anshe Aliyah. You have people in a Chatzar and people in the second story. Sheshachu v'lo ervu. Okay? And they did not make an Eruv. Okay? So basically, you have people on two separate levels. And what happens is that they each made an Eruv with their own people on their own level. People on the bottom made an Eruv with their people on the top made an Eruv with their people, but they didn't make an Eruv together. Anshe Chatzar mishtamshim basar tachton. The people of the courtyard on the bottom are allowed to use anything lower than 10. And the people at top are allowed to use anything above 10. Now, it doesn't really tell us what we're using over here, right? So Gemara is going to explain that. But again, we're saying there's people at the top. All we know so far is that there are people on the top and there are people on the bottom. And we're saying that these people, anything under 10, they could use. Anything above 10, they could use. Now, so far, if this is the case, what we're talking about is a wall. Now, how are you using a wall, right? Basically, we're saying, okay, let's say it's, we're going to assume right now that this is 20 high, okay? And we're saying up till here, these guys could use. Up to down to here, they could use. Now, I mean, this line's not actually here. But what does it mean to use a flat wall? Like that, that's not actually very functional. So Gemara says, Kate said, what are we talking about? Must be ziz yotzim nekosel. We're talking about a project, like a ledge, which comes out of the wall. Lamat me'aser lachatzer, lamala me'aser laliyah. So anything which is above, when it's below 10 tfachim, sorry, if it's below 10 tefachim, it's going to belong to the people in the courtyard. If it's above 10 tefachim, it's going to go to the people of the second story. But what comes out from there? Hadabeni beni aser. If there is something which is directly in the middle of the 20 tefachim, okay, this looks like it's pretty equal. So if there's a wall over here, if there's a wall over here, the chatzar people get to use a little ledge. These guys get to use this ledge. If it's over here, these guys get to use ledge within 10. But the implication is if it's exactly in the middle, then what happens? They both can't use it. This goes like Rav or Shmuel.
This goes like Rav.
This goes like Rav. Ding, ding, ding. Right? Because, very good. Right? Because Shmuel would say, no, since it's in the middle, but these guys, it's going down is easier than going up. Shmuel says, top guys. Rav says, no, middle, top, and when it goes one guy going up, one guy going down, it's equally difficult, and therefore it is us for both. And that is the implication of the Mishnah, because it said below goes to these guys, above goes to these guys, implication middle, no one's allowed to use. So Gemara says, no question. And we're talking about a case where it is, we made a mistake, incorrect assumption over here. We're talking about a case where it is 19 high. There is no middle case. There is no middle case because we're only 19 high, and therefore there only talks about two scenarios. One is when it is above. Let's just make it simpler here. One is when it's above, within the 10 above. One is when it's in the 10 below. But there is no case. They're right next to each other, right? They're basically right next to each other, and therefore there is no case where it's actually going to be in the middle. Don't draw that inference from the Mishnah because the Mishnah is simply not talking about such a case. Okay, so therefore, if the ledge is lower than the people on the bottom, if it's within the 10 below than the people on the bottom, and they have like a doorway, so to speak, they're able to reach it,